becoming clearer now what the effects of Donald Trump's abortion policy is, as women are literally dying waiting for medical care. That is what Kamala Harris said today when she basically told Trump that he has blood on his hands, despite Trump's ridiculous rhetoric saying that all this violence is coming from Democrats. This is directly a result of what Donald Trump's policies are. Play the clip.
And in many ways, it's a beautiful thing to watch. So they wanted to, for 52 years, move it back to the states. That's why they wanted to fight Roe v. Wade. Then about 10 or 12 years ago, it started getting more complex. They were talking about...
Trump thinks it's beautiful. He actually thinks it's a beautiful thing to watch women dying, because that is the consequence of having abortion go back to the states. Now, what are we learning? And I'm going to talk about exactly what this is and what's going on, because this is not an exaggeration. Okay, first, let's just remember that what happened was in Georgia. Okay, let's just review the law. Okay, 2022 is when Roe versus Wade was overturned by a decision called Dobbs. Well, many states, I think 20 plus, I think it was 22 states now, have laws on the books where it essentially limits women's rights to abortion. One of those states is Georgia, which in 2019, what they did was they put a ban in place for abortion after 6 weeks, period. Full stop. Okay. That is what their law says. However, it didn't go into effect. It was just sort of waiting in the wings. It couldn't go into effect because Roe versus Wade was the law of the land still. But they knew that they potentially could, the Republican MAGA Georgia state legislature knew that Donald Trump was packing the courts with these right-wing extremists, the MAGA extremists of the Supreme Court, and knew that there was a chance that Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned because that's what Donald Trump promised. And so when that happened, it automatically went into effect. And this is what's going on. So ProPublica wrote an article, and it just came out talking about how a woman named Amber Thurman suffered from sepsis. It was a grave infection that her suburban Atlanta hospital could have treated. She had access to medical care, but they didn't. So what happened was, she decided she wanted to terminate her pregnancy. So she went to a neighboring state, North Carolina, where she was supposed to have an abortion. But unfortunately, there was horrific traffic. She got there late. They couldn't take her to perform the abortion. So instead, what they did was they gave her the abortion pill. They canceled her and gave her the 2-pill abortion pills. And the way it works is you take it in front of them on day 1, which she did, and the second pill she's supposed to take on day 2. They also counseled her and told her that she should go to the hospital if she suffered any complications. It was pretty clear. So she goes back home to Georgia, and she took her second pill and she started to deteriorate. Her health deteriorated. She would have gone back to the clinic in North Carolina, but it was over 4 hours away for her. And so she couldn't get there in time. So she went to a hospital, because if she'd gone to the clinic, what they could have done is a routine, it's called a D&C procedure that many women get. It has to do with it's like cleaning out your uterus, essentially. And unfortunately, what happened to this woman was she had some fetal tissue still inside her womb. It did not come out the way it's supposed to with the mifepristone. It normally does. This is a very rare complication. And what would normally happen is when that does happen, you go to the hospital and they perform a D&C. But because her life wasn't at risk at that moment, the Georgia hospital refused to do that. And they literally waited until she was going to die and her life was threatened. She went into sepsis, and 20 hours later, they finally performed surgery, but it was too late. And she died, leaving behind a 6-year-old child. It is such a tragedy. And Kamala Harris is rightly so calling Donald Trump out on this. He has blood on his hands as a result. And It's just unbelievable that doctors are terrified and don't want to perform these routine procedures. This dilation and curettage, which is what a D&C is called, is truly a routine procedure. It happens not just when somebody is having an abortion, but it happens routinely to women who need to have this procedure done to their uterus. It's an outpatient procedure. It's not that big of a deal. And Georgia, however, had basically said anyone performing this procedure or performing an abortion, which what it would be, is guilty of a felony. So any doctor could be prosecuted and face up to 10 years in prison. And so literally this poor woman, Miss Thurman, waited in a hospital bed, worried about what would happen to her 6-year-old son. She said to her mother, "Can you please take care of my child?" As doctors monitored her infection. Right? They monitored the infection spreading. They watched her blood pressure sink. They watched her organs begin to fail. And it wasn't until they could determine her life was actually in danger, not potentially at risk of becoming in danger eventually. It had to, at that moment, that's how they interpreted the law. This otherwise healthy 28-year-old woman, she's a medical assistant. She wanted to be a nurse. She was going to go to nursing school. And the officials who reviewed this case, they do these post-mortems on whenever somebody dies. The medical community, this is a well-known procedure in the medical community, what they do. When patient dies, they review it. There are committees that review it to see what happens. And here, what did they decide? That this was a preventable, this was their words, preventable death, okay? So unbelievable that they said that the hospital's delay in performing this critical procedure had a large impact on her fatal outcome. So this review is not made public, but ProPublica got reports that confirm that at least 2 women have already died because they couldn't access legal abortions and timely medical care in their state. There may be others that we are unaware of, but this is the first time this case that an abortion-related death was officially deemed preventable. And so Kamala Harris was right to call him out on this. This is the result of putting the abortion in the hands of the individual states. Donald Trump seems to think this is what people have wanted and everyone have wanted. I don't know anyone who wants it other than the MAGA men who are trying to get this done. But pushing it back to the states is not right. There are real life consequences. Women are dying, and access to routine medical care is literally being withheld by doctors who may want to perform these procedures but feel they can't and are afraid for their own lives that they will be prosecuted. So we have to make sure that this message does not get buried, that people understand what pushing it down to the states, what the consequences actually are, and what this does to women. So I'm KFA Legal on all of your social media handles, but Karen Friedman Agnifilo, I'm a co-host of MeidasTouch 2 shows, MissTrial, which is every week. Join me and my law partners, Danya Perry and former member of Congress, Kathleen Rice, every Thursday, and listen to MissTrial. Don't miss it. Also on every Wednesday and Saturday, my co-hosts Ben Meiselas and Michael Popak on LegalAF. I'm KFA Legal, and I'm happy to be here with you today to share these important messages, because every woman, every person has to know the consequences of Donald Trump and what it means in November and who you have to vote for.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.